David's standing up on his roof. He looks over and he sees Bathsheba. She's a beautiful woman. And I can almost see this happening. I know David is a man after God's own heart. I can almost see him putting his hand over his eyes. And then opening up his fingers and looking again. And before long, he takes his hand from his face. And he really enjoys what he sees. And then all of those horrible sins ensue. This didn't originate with me either, but I love this. David looked at Bathsheba. Then he lingered on what he saw. And then he lusted. I don't believe for a moment that him seeing her was a sin. He turned it into one. Whose fault was that? Could he say, well, the devil made me do it? No, it wasn't right when Flip Wilson said it in some of your lifetimes. And it isn't right today. You cannot say, the devil made me do it. Neither could Sapphira say, well, Ananias made me do it. Neither could David say, well, it was her fault. She shouldn't have been on the rooftop, naked, at this time of the day. And that may very well have been true. Think about what ensued. Where there was adultery that was committed. Then there was murder that was committed. Then there was a baby born to that union. The baby lost its life. And the sword never left the house of David in all of his life. He wasn't able to build the temple. And you think about what all transpired with Absalom. And all of those things that you see. And folks, every bit of that, the genesis of that took place on that rooftop. When David, in a moment of weakness, couldn't turn his head and walk back in the house. Now that sin's been repeated manifold times through the years. And it's just as sickening as it was when David committed it. We can resist. I believe that. God doesn't tempt us, does He? He doesn't tempt us. In James, the first chapter, beginning with verse 13, James says, let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God. So obviously some must have been prone to say that, or he wouldn't put this here for us to read and study. Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. Every man is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. And lust, when it's conceived, brings forth sin, and sin, when it's finished or full grown, brings forth death. That's what happened on that rooftop. Lust was conceived, it matured, and it brought about sin in the life of David. And so much heartache to the kingdom of Israel. When you look around, you see that sin is raging in our country. In so many homes. You have homes that are broken. You have children that are lost. Who's to be the shining light? We are. People say, well, this is a daunting task. There's no way to turn it around. It's gone so far. I don't know if there's any turning it around or not. But I know Jesus said, let your light shine. And I know I can do that. And I can brighten the corner of the world wherever I find myself. And that's all that God requires or asks of us. Jesus tells this group that gathers here to accuse this adulterous woman, let him that is without sin cast the first stone. Folks, that's a lesson I need to learn. I think every one of us are sinners seeking salvation. Those of us who are gathered here tonight, I don't know what situation you find yourself. But those of us, even who are faithful New Testament Christians, are sinners seeking salvation. We want to be saved eternally. But we understand that we are not sinlessly perfect. None of us are. We know that all of us have sinned. Please turn to Romans, the 3rd chapter. People have come up with a lot of things. To me, the book of Romans is one of the most difficult books in all the Bible. It is definitely one of the meatiest, deepest books that you'll find anywhere in the Bible. There's so much taught. The 12th chapter in and of itself is almost like a whole book by itself. There's so many lessons that I need to learn. But most folks like to say, and there's two ideas here. Some will say, well, the first chapter of the book of Romans, Paul is talking to the Jewish world. And in the second chapter of the book of Romans, Paul is talking to the Gentiles. I don't believe that for a nanosecond. I believe the first and the second chapters of the book of Romans is talking about anybody. They say, well, the sins that are logged in the first chapter of the book of Romans were committed by the Gentiles. Yeah, and they were committed by the Jews too. You look at the second chapter. I want you to notice a couple of words that are very pivotal to me. The first verse, therefore thou art inexcusable, O man, whosoever thou art. He didn't say Jew. He didn't say Gentile. He said, whosoever thou art that judgest. For wherein thou judgest another, thou condemnest thyself, for thou that judgest doeth the same thing. Verse 3 says, and thinkest thou this, O man, that judgest them which do such thing, and doeth the same, thou shalt escape the judgment of God? He's talking to everybody. But fast forward to chapter 3 and verse 21. And I want you to understand what's being said here. We know verse 23, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. That was true then, that's true now. But I want you to notice the context wherein it's found. But now, verse 21, the righteousness of God without the law is manifested, being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of God which is by faith of Jesus Christ, unto all and upon all them that believe, for there is no difference. Stop just a minute. What does he mean when he says there's no difference? We're all sinners. Every single one of us. Verse 23, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, being justified freely by His grace through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God hath set forth to be a propitiation through faith in His blood, to declare His righteousness for the remission of sins that are past, through the forbearance of God. I think verse 25, he's saying all those people in the Old Testament who even lived in accordance with God's will and died faithful to God under the old law. If it weren't for the blood of Christ, every one of them would be lost. Because that law was built on the premise that there's a Messiah coming, He's going to live a sinless life, He's going to shed His blood, and everybody's going to have forgiveness that will be obedient to His law. Look at verse 26. To declare, I say at this time, His righteousness, that He might be just, and the justifier of him which believeth in Jesus. Here is a wonderful question. Where is boasting then? Where is boasting then? It is excluded by the law of works, nay, but by the law of faith. Therefore we conclude that a man is justified by faith without the deeds of the law. Is he the God of the Jews only? Is He not also of the Gentiles? Yes, of the Gentiles also. Seeing it is one God which shall justify the circumcision by faith and uncircumcision through faith. Do we then make void the law through faith? God forbid. Yea, we establish the law.